good sign for us to get started. So
Okay.
let me just ask if everyone but Gotti and Ellen and the speakers, Gail and Michelle and Jen, could be put on mute at this time because we're getting ready to take off very soon. Welcome to everyone. Ellen, take it away.
Well, first of all, I'm so excited. Lots of you on this screen have been with me to Israel. And you know, I am extremely excited when I go to Israel. And I have some great friends on the screen, and being with you for the next 10 days or 2 weeks or however long we're staying is just so, so, so exciting. So Nicole, thank you for being the pilot, for getting us all there and for navigating this whole trip. And we look forward to a wonderful, wonderful trip in Israel together. I want to thank Nicole, of course, and thank the Israel and Overseas Committee and the JCRC for sponsoring this virtual trip to Israel. As I mentioned, there was no traffic on the way to the airport, which is great. And I managed to stay under the weight as prescribed. Of course, leaving a lot of room for marzipan rogalach. I can never come back from Israel without a lot of marzipan rogalach. So I have to leave a lot of room in my suitcase. So with that, please make sure you're muted. A happy Chanukah. We will be celebrating Chanukah in Israel. And again, at the very end, we'll light the Chanukah candles together. So I would like to introduce Gail Zemansky to give greetings from Israel and overseas.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our program. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, we can hear you.
I'm Gail Zemansky, and together with Michelle Margulies, we co-chair the Israel and Overseas Committee. The goal of our committee is to connect our community to the people of Israel and to Israel. And so we're very excited today to collaborate with JCRC to bring this virtual tour of Israel. What could be better than sitting in your living room and touring Israel? Just to tell you a little bit about what other programs we support. Just last week, the Ethiopian National Project brought in a couple hundred Ethiopian Jews to Israel to make Aliyah. And so we're very proud to support that program. And as most of you know, our sister city is Arad. And tomorrow we have a program at 11 o'clock where we're going to be lighting the Chanukah candles with them. And the students at the Music Conservatory are going to give us a concert. So if you're interested in joining us, that's at 11 o'clock tomorrow. And so with that, I'll hand it back to Ellen.
Thank you, Gail. As a matter of fact, right before you hopped on to the meeting, Gotti told us that he was able to make contact with somebody in Arad, and I'll leave that surprise piece to him, but we will have an Arad connection. Jen Steinberg sends her apologies that she couldn't be on this afternoon. She's the chair of JCRC, and JCRC is the advocacy arm of the Jewish Federation of Delaware. We advocate for issues regarding the Jewish people, the world, the national and local and international, as well as issues relating to Israel. So anyone who is interested in advocacy, please contact either Jen or myself. And of course, read the Jewish Voice every month. There's usually at least one activity or program that we have done to promote Jewish and Israeli knowledge and identity in the world. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Selma Rothman and Gadi Ben Dov to take us on our way to Ben Gurion Airport.
So welcome aboard, everybody, and a Chodesh Tov and Chanukah Sameach. May you have a great month ahead, and may good things come to everyone on this trip. and all over the world. We are so glad you have joined us. I want to tell you that I have been doing these trips for many years, and some of them I've done live with Gotti and with Ellen, with Rabbi Bernhardt. Together, we have led trips on the ground in Israel. But today, we are going to do our best to make you feel like you are there. I'm a Jewish educator. My ties to Israel go back to the Six-Day War when I was a student at the Hebrew University. And ever since then, I have been finding it difficult to stay away. I always feel like I've got to go home. And I've been blessed on my tours to work with Gadi Ben Dov. And Gadi is the consummate tour guide. He is educated and spirited. He was born in the U.S., but raised in a kibbutz in the Galil. He loves Israel and has been an IDF officer and traveled the world. His love of the country will come across on this tour. You will see. I want to say to you, there are a few rules on the bus, which we always do on the ground, really, so we'll do them today. Please mute yourself during the tour. However, we love questions, so don't hesitate to write them in the chat box. And at some point, we will have an opportunity to hear some good answers from Gotti, and you may want to share your thoughts. At the
Chat
conclusion,
is disabled.
I'm sorry?
The chat is disabled, I believe.
I will check into that. Okay, we'll
you.
look into that, Ellen. At the conclusion of the tour, you may stay on because you might just want to chat for a few minutes as well. And I want to let you know also, when we go on real tours, we pick a Hebrew word for the day. Our Hebrew word for today is going to be yalla, which is really an Arabic type word. Yalla means, hey, let's get going. So, Gotti, yalla, let's get started. Take us
All
away.
right, take it away. Shalom, everyone. My name is Gadi, as we have were able to figure that one out already. I can also talk with an Israeli accent to give you the full effect of being in Israel, but I'll spare that from you today. We'll put on my fake American accent and we'll have some fun. So this kind of tour is sort of interesting because it allows us to be in places that we might not have been able to go into. It will allow us to basically travel almost all around Israel, north to south and east to west, with all kinds of fun activities. We will be visiting in Arad. We'll see the Chanukiyot, the light of the Chanukiyot in the Jewish quarter in Jerusalem. We'll have some sufganiyot, the donuts, as they're called by you. It'll be awesome. But first, let us start our exciting tour here. We'll press all the right buttons, and hopefully things will be okay. Can you guys see my screen? Are we okay? Very good. So first of all, here we are. I don't know if you recognize this place. Anybody know where we are? It doesn't look like Israel because we are at the Federation Building of Delaware. We're getting ready to leave. And I see the Einstein Academy Jewish Day School. That sounds like a place I would want to go to. But as we leave from Delaware, let's hop on our airplane. We look at this, we are already in Ben Gurion Airport. This was a very quick flight. We're about to land, and as we land, we'll see Israel through the window. Welcome to Israel. And we'll continue. We won't go through all of the landing here, but as we land, we're getting starting to see the signs in Hebrew, no less. Wow, this is really exciting. We're getting our luggage. And as we get our passports through, we're going to arrive at we're getting our luggage. We'll arrive at the arrival hall, and there's a surprise waiting for us. The surprise is our driver, Moti. No, that's not our driver, Moti. That's got to be somebody else. Oh, that's not him either. But really, the surprise is a special greeting, a special song that we have prepared for you, especially for the Delaware Federation mission to Israel. Wait for it. See, everyone's behaving normally. We're about to come out with our luggage. This is, of course, a birthright program.
I did it. ALT plus. You did it. We're still needed, but we are in Israel.
Shalom, shalom. Okay, welcome to Israel, everyone. I hope that put you in the feeling of here we are in Eretz Yisrael, about to start our tour. And it's a tour about Chanukah, in case everyone wasn't aware of that. We're on the Ner Shvi'i, the 7th night of Chanukah. Very exciting. It's been kind of an interesting Chanukah for all of us. Usually I'm extremely busy during Chanukah. Coming up on the busy season of all the tourists arriving in Israel. But instead, my wife and I were very busy here in our house doing Chanukah virtual tours. And you're one of our exciting tours. Here we are flying over. I wish the flight were this fast and this quick. And our story actually does not start really here in the land of Israel, but rather I'm going to zoom out a little bit. It actually starts in a place called Macedonia, not Greece, actually a little bit farther north. And I don't know if you know this, but Alexander the Great, right? He has a big grape on his head. No, just kidding. Alexander the Great. He's not really Greek. He's Macedonian. The Greeks and the Macedonians are fighting over who he really belongs to, but that's a side story. And Alexander conquers the world at a fairly young age. He was in his early 30s. And as you can see, in order to get to Africa, Egypt, or Asia, he gets all the way as far as Pakistan, India of today even, and going towards Europe and Asia Minor, Turkey of today. A lot of that takes him through the land of Israel, which is where we are. It's always been a land bridge between the empires. Here he is, Alexander himself on the coins. Back then, minting coins was the way for the emperor, for the ruler to show that he's in charge, because coins exchange hands and eventually news travels. And here's Alexander on the wall of a mosaic in the city of Pompeii in Rome. Whether or not this is really the way
It says I'm temporarily I'm muted, but I don't know what the heck it's doing. And I went in and went out. It's still doing it.
Okay, so we'll continuing, and as we said, really the story is about the land bridge in the land of Israel. And after Alexander dies at a young age, 33, we're talking 332 BCE, before the Common Era, 2,300 years ago. His kingdom divided into 4 pieces, and we end up in the kingdom of the Seleucids. Don't worry about the name, they won't be on the exam at the end. But the king of the Seleucids lives in Damascus. And the guy in charge is a man named Antiochus IV. And Antiochus IV, Antiochus, is the king of the Seleucids, or Greeks, the way we call them. And he starts to impose taxes, as every king likes to do. And when he sends his messengers to the area of the land of Israel, we start the story of Chanukah. Now, what is Chanukah about? The word Chanukah means dedication or rededication. And we know that in modern Israel, modern Hebrew, Chanukah or Chanukat Bait is a word that we use in modern Hebrew. When I buy a new house, I'll invite all of you, my new friends, to come to a Chanukat Bait, to a dedication of my new house. So it's a word that's used quite a bit. It also comes from the word education, chinuch. And we know that in the Bible, in the book of Exodus, when Moses comes down eventually with the Torah from Mount Sinai, he then creates the tabernacle, or the Ohel Moed, the temporary temple, and he does a Chanukah of the temple, of this tabernacle. And again, the word comes from educating the people about being Jewish in the book of Exodus, and in the story of Hanukkah, that was the idea as well. The temple was disabled for 3 years. There was no temple, and the Maccabees essentially rededicated, also re-educated everyone on what was going on. Okay, we're using a wonderful tool, by the way, Google Earth. I don't know if you've played around with this. It's incredible. We've been doing some really cool stuff with it. And here we are in a place called Maresha. Maresha, or Bet Guvrin in its Arabic and Hebrew name. Back 2,200 years ago, when Antiochus comes to the land, it's a city with mostly non-Jewish people. And we'll talk in a minute about why we're here, but you can see that we're in these big bell caves. We'll see the top of the cave in a moment. And this cave specifically is one of the workshops for the people who live here. You come down from the top down into the workshop. And this is one of the examples of these caves. We call them bell caves because they're shaped like a bell. Essentially, this is chalk, or very soft limestone. And the folks up top build their houses from bricks that they would carve out from these caves. And then they realized that the basement is a great place to work. And it was cool and nice and cool in the summer. It was warmer and protected from the elements during the winter. And they started creating this web and set of these caves that essentially gave them the ability to put all of their work, which was mostly making wine, and of course, subject that's connected to Hanukkah is making olive oil. And in a moment, we'll see a movie that explains a little bit about making olive oil. But this is a cave that was excavated. You can actually see the chisel marks on the roof to see how these things were excavated. And where we are is actually an industrial size olive oil press. They would bring the olives first and put them in little baskets in this little basin. An animal would be tied to this beam of wood and circling and crushing the olives. That would be phase one, the first press. And then they would take those baskets with the olives in them and bring them over here. We can see the a pile of these baskets over here. And these beams of wood with the weights on top of them would put another press on the olives, and more olive oil would come out and drain down here below. There's a big basin, and that's how they would produce olive oil. How do we know this is not a Jewish place? Because of this niche over here. You see this little area over here. There was an idol that was placed here. During the Greek and Roman period, they had lots of different idols. The idol for fertility, and the idol for good business, and the idol for prosperity, and so on. So they had an idol that was overlooking and helping the people produce the best olive oil. So let's watch our little short movie. This is from Shalom Sesame, which is sort of the Israeli Jewish version of Sesame Street. And we'll meet a young man who lives in Modi'in, which is where Amy and I live, my wife and I and our 2 kids, and our dog that you'll hear in the background every now and then. And Modi'in is also its claim to fame, besides the fact that it's where the Bendo family lives. It's also the place where the Maccabees come from. And we'll hear a little bit from this young man telling the story of how you make oil and about living in Modi'in.
My name is Asher, and I live in a city in Israel called Modi'in. Modi'in
There's
is
my
the city
house.
where Judah Maccabee and his brothers lived long ago. The Maccabees rededicated the temple in Jerusalem. They used olive oil to light the menorah. That olive oil burned for 8 days and nights. Tonight, I will light my own Chanukah for Hanukkah, the festival of lights. This Chanukah is special. It has been in my family for years, and we need olive oil to light it. I am very excited because today, my mom is taking me to a special place called Neot Kedumim.
Neot Kedumim is one of my favorite places. It's very close to Modi'in, a few miles away. And it's a biblical park trying to recreate all of the processes and ways of life from the time of the Bible, of the Tanakh.
Michal is our guide. Welcome to Neot Kedumim. She will teach us how to make olive oil out of freshly picked olives. Why did you come to visit me? To see how to make olive oil. Wow. Are you ready? Yeah, let's go.
So I don't know if you know this, but when you pick olives off the tree, you don't eat them. They need to sit in a brine in order to become edible. But they do have a lot of oil in them.
Then we bring them into the olive press and turn them into a paste. With those 2 stones. That's Was it difficult? No. This huge stone crushes the olives so we can squeeze the oil out of them.
And now we need to move this very, very heavy stone. Do you think you can do it?
Yeah.
By the way, olive season starts in October and November. So when you get to December, the time of Hanukkah, there's lots of olives that are ready to be pressed for olive oil.
Jasmine the mule and Musa, her owner, help us move the big stone and crush the olives. Making olive oil is hard work. This mule must be really strong.
Now we have
the olive paste is put into flat baskets and then
So that was the first press, the extra virgin olive oil first press.
Musa turns the handle.
And now we're getting more out of the olives.
And the oil drains out. Look at these shiny drops.
And what's amazing is that the process really has not changed in thousands of years.
Now we can light our
It's really, we just improved it with machines, but it's the same system.
Did in the temple in Jerusalem.
All right, happy Hanukkah, Asher. Thank you for sharing with us. And let's continue our tour now that we've been to Marishah. But why did we actually come to Marishah? That is the real question. So we came to Marishah because it connects to the story of Chanukah. The cave we were in just now, this is the entrance to it. You can look up above. There used to be houses over here, but at some point, just before the Maccabees took over the land, this city was abandoned. All of the houses were destroyed. And what's interesting is this is an archaeological site. And the archaeologists were digging in all of these caves, trying to find what the people were living off of and what they did here. And they worked in this cave for a while. This is the late 1990s. And when they would come in every morning, they noticed on the left-hand side, there was a little hole about this big, not big enough for anyone to crawl in there or anything. And they continued to dig farther in. But eventually, one morning they came in and they realized that that hole on the left-hand side was much bigger, big enough for a person to crawl in there. And they went in and they found some very interesting pieces of a stone sign. What they found were these three small pieces that were broken off. This piece was gone. They didn't know it was there. And they found a stone with Greek inscription. So very cool. They didn't really know what it was, but it talked something about taxes and it was in Greek and Marisha, so it was cool. But then one day, a few years later, an antique dealer was approached by someone that deals with black market antiquities. And he told him that he was able to put his hands on a piece of stone with an inscription from Tel Marisha, from Marisha, that actually says on it that it's from the time of a guy named Heliodorus. And this was a big deal because when this antique dealer looked at the top piece, he managed to purchase the piece from this dealer, and he donated it to the Israel Museum. Here we are in the Israel Museum, by the way. If you want to take a tour in the Israel Museum, it's all networked with this Google Earth system. We're in the archaeology department. And what we can see here is what is known as the Heliodorus inscription. The big piece, they realized, fits into the three pieces that were found by the archaeologist a few years earlier in Marisha. And they realized that on this inscription, it talks about a man named Heliodorus, who claims to be, according to this sign, to be the direct messenger from King Antiochus IV in Damascus. And Heliodorus says to everyone that the taxes are going to be raised and that they need to start supplying more money and goods to the king. It's basically a stela like this, or a stone like this was placed in every town around the Seleucid kingdom. And what's interesting is that we know who this Heliodorus is. We know about him not from the inscription, but rather from the book of Maccabees. In the book, there are two books of Maccabees, 1 and 2, that are not part of the Jewish Bible, but they are part of the Christian Bible, the Christian version of the Old Testament. And in that book, there's a story about a man named Heliodorus, who's a messenger of the king, that comes to Jerusalem and goes to the temple and says to the high priest, on the order of the king, I need to get into the treasury and have an inventory of how much money you have here in the temple. And of course, the Jews say, Ma pitom, no way, you're not going in there. And according to the book of Maccabees, Heliodorus goes in anyway. And all of a sudden they hear bangs and things crashing and all sparks coming out. And Heliodorus comes out after a few minutes, all bleeding and beaten up. And he's got an amazing story to tell. He says he was attacked by angels, guardians of the Jewish temple, who said to him, no, Heliodorus, don't mess with the money that the people of Israel have donated for the house of the Israelite God. Go away and tell your king that this is not for him. So we've known about, here's a depiction, a picture painted in the Middle Ages of Heliodorus being beaten up by the angels. You see the angels and some kind of other mythological creature. So we knew about Heliodorus, but until this piece of stone was found, we never actually found his name outside of the books of Maccabees. And this is really cool because essentially this is a evidence outside of the books of Maccabees of the story of Chanukah unfolding before our eyes. So the Heliodorus inscription talking about Heliodorus and raising the taxes, which fits with the story that we know about. And as I said, that is in the Israel Museum in the archaeology section. But the story starts in this place, and this is right next to where I live. I live about a mile in this direction. We are in Modi'in, and Modi'in is a new city, relatively speaking, about 20 years old in Israel. And it's named after the town where the Maccabees came from. We weren't sure exactly where it was, but on some of the, this was about 10 years ago, building one of the neighborhoods here on the side. Can we see the neighborhood? No, you'll have to take my word for it. We came across this synagogue, essentially, and we know that this place in Arabic is called El Umdan. Umdan sounds like Modi'in. It's the same letters in Hebrew. It means essentially the place of the pillars or the columns. And as you can see, it's a synagogue in a different style that we know back home in North America. It's a square area with seating, and the leader of the tefillah, or the teacher, would be standing in the middle. There's also a mikveh, a ritual bath, that was found nearby. So we know for sure that this is a Jewish synagogue and that it was in this area of Modi'in. So maybe this is where the story of the revolt of the Maccabees against the Greeks actually starts. So what is the story? We all know about the Chanukah miracle. In the book of Maccabees, it says that the Greeks prohibited the Jews from essentially doing Jewish. No more prayers, no more offerings at the temple, no more circumcision and bris milah ceremonies, no more celebration of the holidays, and even worse, put a statue of this guy, Antiochus IV, in Jerusalem, and sacrifice unclean animals. Oy vey. So in Modi'in, as the story goes, a man named Mattathias, Matityahu, comes out and starts to fight against the Greeks. He kills some of the Greek officials. He even killed some of the fellow Jews that were there and were submitting to these terrible directives from the Greeks. And from here, Judah the Maccabee, one of his 5 sons, leads the rebellion against the Greeks. And as we know, they were successful and were able to free Jerusalem from the Greeks. But I'm going ahead of myself here, because very soon we'll go to Jerusalem and talk about the temple and the miracle of Chanukah. But before that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the symbolism of Chanukah for Israelis as opposed to the symbolism in North America. We both talk about the light and chasing the light, chasing the darkness away and bringing the light. In Israel, it's a lot more of a national holiday. It's not a religious holiday per se. And it really celebrates the fight of the little Maccabees and their small army against the big bad Greeks, and the ability of the few against the many to liberate the country. And a lot of it is about not fearing and not being afraid to stand up to the big forces around you. One of my favorite singing couples does a really nice rendition of a song in Hebrew. They're named Yonina. This is Yoni and this is Nina. Together they're Yonina. And this is their daughter. I'm not sure what her name is, but she's very cute. And she participates in the song as well. And the words, I just want to show you. This is a typical song. I don't know if they teach this in America or not, but every kid in Israel knows this song as a Chanukah song. And it goes along the lines of Banu choshech legaresh beyadeinu ova esh. It's almost like a marching song. And we go out on the streets with torches, and there's a big parade of chasing away the darkness. There's a translation here on the bottom left-hand corner. But what Yonina did is a very cool rendition using a song by a guy named Eminem Maybe you've heard of him. He's a rapper, not Jewish. And they included one of his songs, and I think this is very cool to put us in the Chanukah spirit. We are all one small light, and together we are very strong and chase away the darkness.
I'm not afraid to take a stand, Everybody, come take my hand. Walk this road together through the storm, without weather, hold on. Now you know that you're not alone. I'll if you feel like you've been down the same road. Not afraid to take a stand, Everybody, come take my hand. Walk this road together through the storm, without weather, hold on. Now you know that you're not alone. I if you feel like you've been down the same road. Darkness of the night, leave and make way for the light.
Very cool. Thank you, Yonina. It's funny, they started out doing short videos on YouTube and became pretty famous in Israel. So it's one of my, as I said, they do some very cool stuff. Maybe
Gotti?
we'll have time for some more of them a little
Gotti?
bit later. Yes.
I just want you to know that in Wilmington at the Einstein Academy, they do sing that song. I know Ellen said she does sing it, as well as Sylvia Wagman said she sang it with her students at the school as well.
Excellent.
And other people are chiming in. They do know it, so it was great to hear. Thank you.
Metsuyan. So the Maccabees advanced on Jerusalem and they liberated Jerusalem and the temple. We came here to the Temple Mount and the place where the temple would have been standing. Obviously, this is not the temple today, but this is what it looks like. And what would have the temple looked like back then? We actually don't really know, because after the Maccabees, about 100 years later, came a guy named King Herod, who redid this whole area. That's already during the Roman times. That's a different tour altogether. But what you're seeing here is perhaps the platform, a similar platform that was built during that time. And what's interesting is that the book of Maccabees, hold on to your seats, does not mention the miracle of the little container that was in the corner that was there that lit the menorah for 8 days. Drum roll. I know it's kind of surprising. That miracle was added to the story of Chanukah in the Talmud about 600 years after this event. Why? There's some interesting suggestions about that, but the bottom line is that even though we see the Maccabees as very successful and liberators and a role model, the generations that came after them, essentially their children and grandchildren, turned back towards the Greek culture, turned their names into Simon Aristobulus and John Hyrcanus and Alexander Jannaeus, and essentially became Greek. So I think that Judaism, after all of this, didn't really see the Maccabees. The first few centuries saw the story of Chanukah as an important story, but eventually the sages of the Talmud, and again, we're talking 550 CE or something like that, sort of added this idea that there was a miracle of rededicating the temple. Now, what did the temple look like? As I said, we don't know. This is the temple from the time of King Solomon. Maybe it looked like this. Here's another drawing so you can understand a little bit the outside courtyard and the altar, the inside where the menorah was standing, and then all the way in the back, the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant was placed. But of course, during the time of the Maccabees, it was not there already. It was taken away by the Babylonians when the temple was destroyed in 586 BCE. But we do have, believe it or not, a place in Israel where we can see a little mini model of what the temple looked like. And I know this might be surprising to you, but we're going to jump up to the north of Israel, almost on the border with Lebanon. Just so you understand, we're right at the border. These hills are already Lebanon in the north of Israel. And this is a place called Tel Dan. You might have been here for some of the nature area. There's some beautiful nature walk. It's one of the tributaries of the Jordan River, a lot of water. But the reason I really like this place is because the archaeologists found here what they believe to be a model of the temple in Jerusalem. Make a long story short, after David conquers Jerusalem and makes it the capital of the Israelite kingdom, Solomon, his son, builds a temple on top of the Temple Mount. But after Solomon dies, the son that takes over, Rehoboam, is not too great. The people don't like him. He's raising taxes, and they break off. 10 tribes break off from the kingdom, and they create the kingdom of Israel. The northern kingdom and the southern kingdom are separated. This is in the book of Kings. You can look it up. And it says that the first king of Israel, the 10 tribes that broke off, created 2 alternative temples, one in Bethel, which is Ramallah of today, about 10 miles north of Jerusalem, and the other one in a place called Dan. So we know that in Dan, there should be a model of the temple. And in fact, what we found, look at this, there's an outside courtyard, an inside courtyard, an altar. Of course, this is metal, just to give us an idea of what it would look like. And on the other side, here's another view from a different side. You can see where these folks are sitting. These are steps leading up to a fancy building made with these, what's called ashlar stones, with the frames around them, perhaps where the building of the temple itself was, and in the back, the Holy of Holies, just like in Jerusalem. So this is a place that still exists today, and we can actually see maybe this is what the temple the Maccabees liberated would have looked like, but in Jerusalem. And again, it's a theory, maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe it's not to scale and it was bigger in Jerusalem. But I jokingly like to say to my groups that come here that this is the first Reformed temple ever, because essentially what they did was created an alternative for the temple that they couldn't reach in Jerusalem. But let's go back to our story and talk about what was in the temple. So I'm sorry to say this, folks, and I'm sure most of you actually know this. On Chanukah, we light not a menorah,
Chanukah.
a Chanukah. It comes from the word Chanukah. It's based on the symbol of Judaism, which is the menorah, but it has 8 or 9 actually arms to remind us of the miracle of Chanukah, that the little container lasted for 8 days. By the way, why 8 days? Because the rebellion of Chanukah, of the Maccabees, starts when the people were wanting to come to Jerusalem for Sukkot, the pilgrimage holiday that lasts 8 days. That's when the rebellion starts and breaks out. They weren't able to celebrate Sukkot. So 3 years later, when they finally retake the temple, they said, we're going to start again where we finished last time. In other words, they celebrated Sukkot in Chanukah. Are you confused already or not? But at any rate, what they did, the 8 days also comes from the connection that the worship at the temple was ended during the holiday of Sukkot, and therefore Judah the Maccabee, when he rededicates the temple, he says, we are going to mark this for 8 days, just like the holiday of Sukkot. So a Chanukiah has 8 arms, and the menorah is what was burning in the temple, the candelabra that has 7 arms that was lit by the olive oil, which we'll talk about soon. So whenever you see Adam Sandler or you talk to him, make sure to tell him that he does not light a menorah It actually, the song should say a Chanukah. So we're visiting now in the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem. And I was here a few days ago and took some pictures and some footage. So what you're going to see now is actually contemporary, modern 2020 Hanukkah in Jerusalem. And what we're going to see are the displays of Chanukiot out on the streets. Why do people put these glass displays right at the entrance to their houses and in their windows? Because we are told that the light of the Chanukiah should not be for us in our home, just for our family, but rather should be shined out to the world and shared with everyone else. So when you walk around the Jewish quarter, you see these beautiful glass displays. This was just an artistic picture that I thought was cool. And here we actually, my friend Itamar and I ran into a family lighting their Chanukiah on the first day of Hanukkah. So they allowed us to film and join them in the lighting of the Chanukiah. And of course, since Hanukkah is a holiday created by tradition and not from the Tanakh, from the Torah, you're allowed to light fire and to take pictures. Of course, all the kids want to light their own Chanukah there. So they literally come out of the house and do the candle lighting outside as they light their Chanukiot in the displays. And singing Maoz Tzur at the end, of course. Very good. Thank you very much. The Stern family in the Old City. And another short footage. Oh, I went too fast. That we're going to show you of some more of these lighting of the Chanukiot in the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem. And again, we filmed this a few days ago in Jerusalem. Yofi, very good. And what else do we do in Israel when we're done with the Chanukiot and lighting our candles? We go to get some great sufganiyot. Now, in Israel, I know for you guys, you get these boring jelly donuts, and Dunkin' Donuts always runs out of them if you live in a Jewish neighborhood. But here, we really, this cafe called Roladin Bakery took it to a whole other level. Look at these amazing sufganiyot. And of course, Selma's favorite bakery, Marzipan, also followed suit. This is Marzipan, the famous rogalach from the Machane Yehuda market. And I went out especially because Selma asked me to, and filmed in Roladin. Look at these amazing display. This is live in Modi'in the other day.
Oh, wow.
Filled with custard. And you see they have these like syringes that you can squirt the filling Oreo. That's my son's favorite. Absolutely amazing. It's really crazy what we've done with the sufganiyot in this country. But let's continue our story of Chanukah and talk about two quick things, and that is the menorah. What is the deal with the menorah? So we're at one of the most famous places in Jerusalem. This is the menorah outside of the Knesset. We'll turn you around so you'll see where you are. Here we are by the Knesset, the Parliament of Israel. And this, of course, is the menorah. This was donated by the United Kingdom, or given as a gift to the state of Israel in the early 50s. But it's based on the symbol of Judaism, the menorah burning in the temple, that was very important to our people. And by the way, and I say this a lot to people, if we would run into Judah the Maccabee on the streets, first of all, you would tell us his favorite joke, which is, my name is Judah, and I practice judo, as in you don't know who you're messing with. So you don't know who you're messing with. Be very careful. But he would not be wearing a pendant that says Chai or a Star of David. He would be wearing a pendant of a menorah. The Star of David is only later on. The menorah was the real Jewish symbol, and it's based on the menorah that we saw before that became the symbol of the state of Israel, is based on Titus's arch, which is the arch made in Rome. Titus was the Roman emperor, the general that takes over Jerusalem and destroys the temple way back when in 70 to the Common Era. Now, how did they make the oil that went into the menorah, and where was this made? So this is a site that most of us don't visit because it's sort of reclaimed by the Christian world. This is a place called Gat Shmanim. It's an olive grove, an ancient olive grove. Look at the size of this olive tree. This olive tree is believed to be over 1,000 years old, and it's right below the Temple Mount. If you look from the Temple Mount to the east, there's a ridge over there that is known as the Mount of Olives. That's where the cemetery is, the Jewish cemetery. Why the Mount of Olives? Because there were olive groves over there, and because this is where there was a place called Gat Shmanim, which later on in English became Gethsemane, and it means the place of the olive press, literally where they were producing the super duper extra special olive oil, only the best for the temple. But there was literally a factory of olive oil down below by the temple, which is why we have the Mount of Olives and why we have Gat Shmanim right below there. It was claimed by the Christians, as I mentioned, because this is where Jesus and the disciples are camping out when they come to Jerusalem during the Passover Seder. And this is where Jesus is captured and taken to crucifixion later. But Gethsemane literally means Gat Shmanim, the place of the olive press. And just some more pictures of some ancient olives. The olive tree, by the way, Judaism, we compare ourselves to the olive tree. The olive tree is very, very resilient. If you cut it off, even at the trunk, it will grow back. It develops into different directions and different streams. It looks kind of very old and special and different elements in its trunk. So very much like the Jewish people. We talked already about how to make olive oil. So this is important to understand that one of the reasons that the little container was not enough to feed the menorah for more than one day is that they couldn't just bring some olive oil from somewhere. It had to be the really, really special first press, very gentle, absolutely no water or anything in it, just the pure olive oil that was made with a special seal of the priest, so it would be kosher, and so on. So this is where this was created and took place. And just another quick thing to mention, that olive oil has some very, very important properties. It's not just used for seasoning our salad and making salad dressing, but rather it's a very important element during the ancient times. It was the light, the electricity of the ancient times. And we know from the book of Kings that King Saul, King David, and then King Solomon were all anointed with olive oil, special olive oil with different perfumes. And you can see here, Tzadok, the priest, went down and caused Solomon to ride upon King David's mule. And where's the priests took the horn of oil out of the tent and anointed Solomon to king. So it was a shofar, essentially, a horn of some kind of animal, and it was filled with oil, and with that they would anoint the king. We still use that term today. And by the way, the word Mashiach, the Messiah, comes from the same word as anointing in Hebrew. Limshoach is to anoint. So the Mashiach literally means the anointed one. All right, I've bored you guys quite a bit here with all the Chanukah stuff. So the story of the Maccabees ends. They are buried in Modi'in nearby. This is a memorial for the Maccabees. We didn't actually find where they were buried, but we know from the book of Maccabees that their tombs, Judah the Maccabee and the 5 brothers and Mattathias the father, they were buried, and their tomb was marked by a pointed pyramid-style building, which is why this memorial is built the way it is with these pyramids. But no visit of the Delaware Federation mission to Israel would be complete without going to our sister city in Arad. So we're now heading into the desert. We're hovering above the city of Arad in the desert. The Dead Sea is right below us. If you haven't been to Arad, it's one of my favorite cities. It's a beautiful place. This is the Dead Sea already. Masada is down here, and a beautiful aerial view right above. And this is, I found this on the internet today. This is a very cool picture. And nearby to the modern city of Arad is also the ancient Tel of Arad that has a very interesting archaeological site. This is from the time of Solomon, 3,000 years ago. It says in the Tanakh that Solomon actually had a fortress in Arad. And we're going to land in one of my favorite spots. It's close to a hotel that I stay with my groups if we stay in Arad. It's a beautiful overlook into the desert. Look at this amazing desert view. And we have a greeting from one of our lay leaders that are part of the partnership between Delaware and Arad. And she pre-recorded this today to greet you guys on your tour for Chanukah.
Hi guys, and welcome to Arad. My name is Ilan Tzachi, and I'm a member in the steering committee of Arad Delaware partnership. Right now, I'm actually in the most beautiful place in Arad, most beautiful lookout point in Arad, which actually, in a good day, you can see from here the Dead Sea and the Moab Mountain, and the color of the desert, the brown color of the desert, with the blue color of the Dead Sea, and the red color of the Moab Mountain. It's just amazing. Hope you will enjoy the virtual tour today in Arad, and I hope that one day you will get to see it in real. So for now, just bye, and happy Chanukah. Bye.
Very good. Thank you, Hila. That was very nice. And one place that I want to land in Arad itself is the conservatory that I know that the Delaware Federation is involved in. In fact, I heard there's a program with the conservatory tomorrow. So here we are right outside the conservatory in the middle of the neighborhoods in Arad. Just turn us around a bit and see where we are. Right near some of the kindergartens and schools. And let's go inside. Okay, it says Conservatorium Le Musica be'Arad, the Arad Music Conservatory, and of course the performance hall. And fresh off the press, a picture that I received today from our friends in Arad of them lighting the candles. And you can see here Newark and Delaware. And here they are lighting the Chanukah candles a couple days ago with, of course, don't forget the sufganiot from Roladin. You got to have those. So happy Chanukah from your friends and partners in Arad as well. Whew. Okay, that was a lot of talking. I'm happy to take some questions if we have time for it. And if we have some more greetings, Selma, I'm turning it back to you. You're muted, Selma.
Hey,
There you go.
so I want to mention that in the chat, we had a few people responding and mentioning things about the group from Delaware. Seth Katzen, can you jump in and just echo what you said in the chat?
Sure. So the woman who spoke to us, her name is Gila, and she works in the mayor's office. She was in Delaware a couple years ago with the mayor, and she's a good contact and friend of ours from Arad.
Excellent, excellent. And I was wondering if the people who were on board with us, the Weinsteins from Jerusalem, could join and just tell us a little bit about what they did in Jerusalem with those Roladin Sufganiot and their celebration. Could you jump in, our Delaware couple in Yerushalayim?
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, it is quite an experience. We've been here a number of years during the Hanukkah season, and the lines from about 10 o'clock every morning in front of, well, especially lines now because there's a distance requirement and a limitation on the number of people that can enter the stores. But for about a 10-day period, a couple days before Hanukkah begins, these excellent custom, just fantastic stores begin to customize in a most interesting way. They are so inventive. And as we chatted before, they're not fat enough, they're not big enough, they're not full enough with cholesterol. So what the stores end up doing is they take these syringes filled with all kinds of additional chocolates and syrup. And when the kids start to eat them, they then squeeze and all the syrup enters into the donuts. But it is, the grandparents walk out with these boxes with their grandchildren. They probably spend 400 shekels each while they fill up the boxes. But it is truly a happening. And in light of all the issues we're all experiencing, just to see all the happy faces for so many wonderful reasons. And we also have excellent happiness today because it has been raining all day in Yerushalayim. And so it is really kind of challenging outside, but we know we're getting a lot of required rain, and so it's marvelous.
Wow. So that's the rain we prayed for on Sukkot, the holiday connected to Hanukkah. And we thank you for that. I want to let you all know that Gadi is really an expert in the things he shared with us. And I know on every trip, I learn new things, and the history is fascinating. If anyone has any other questions, please don't hesitate to jump in. I want to mention that Alex Schwartz has a fabulous sense of humor because he wrote in the chat box when we were watching the oil presses, he wrote that it was very impressive. So thank you for your sense of humor, Alex Schwartz, and bringing it to the group. At this time, I'm going to just repeat and echo thank you to Gail Szymanski, Michelle Margolis, and Jen Steinberg, as well as Gadi, as well as my dear friend, Rabbi Ellen Bernhardt. And I'm going to ask if anyone has a Chanukiah ready. I do. I know Ellen does. What we'd like to do now is light our Chanukiot together. Gadi, you said it was the 7th night in Hanukkah, and the people that are in Yerushalayim will be lighting 7 with you. But here in the States, we're in the middle of our 6th day. So symbolically, we will be lighting 6 and tonight adding our 7th candle. And after candle lighting, stay with us for just a moment or two more. We'd like to sing Hatikva together. Ellen, Rabbi Bernhardt, I'm going to ask you, I hope I gave people a chance to get their candles and their Chanukiot ready. I have mine, and I'm going to ask those who are ready.
I'm going to ask, actually, I'm going to ask Michelle Margulies to begin the candle lighting. And remember, this is a symbolic candle lighting since we lit last night, as Selma said, and we'll light again this evening. So there's a concept in Judaism called L'Shem Chinuch, in honor of education. So that's what we're doing here. Go ahead, Michelle, take it from the top.
Okay, I will say the bracha without saying Hashem's name. Baruch atah Adoshem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai Adoshem Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa nisim labosenu v'yamim hahem bazman hazeh.
Amen. Ma'osor Yeshua
Elishabeach Tzikon Beit Tefilati V'shakota Nisabeach Li'etzachit Ma'each Azek Mor
Bashir is more Chanukah Mizbeach Azek Mor Bashir is more Chanukah Mizbeach.
And now join us in the singing of Hatikva. Ellen, would you start us?
Sure. Stand if you're able and you want. And of course, the word Hatikva means hope. And we always Jews hope for a better day and for a better future and for a world of peace. So let's all join in together.
I want to